Well, if you smell what we're cooking, it's another edition of the greatest promos. Must be 6:05 on a Saturday. My name's Steve Gloss, and I've spent more money on spilt Mountain Dew than these guys have on plastic toys and wrestling tickets, my friends. With us, of course, is Mr. Bob Hansen, the fastest mouth in all the land, the outsider himself, Racktime Rob, and of course, the master of ceremonies, the man with the plan. He truly is the Tower of Power, too sweet to be sour. He's not the son of a plumber, but he's a mean some. Anyhow, shut your mouth. That's Michael Mercy, and we're glad to be here with you, Michael. What do we got on tap for this episode?
With a tear in my eye, this is the greatest Ric Flair promo of all time.
It's one of them.
Man, that covers a lot of ground. I don't think you can pick the greatest Ric Flair promo of all time, but this is 1992 Royal Rumble. Is this the greatest Rumble?
It's one of them. It really is one of the best that's out there, in my opinion, just for the talent that was involved at the time and the story that was told with Flair doing his thing, man. Flair wasn't going to be satisfied to come in at number 30 and win the day.
They were fighting for this right here. Winged Eagle world title. Before the Royal Rumble was bragging rights, but this time, before the Rumble was the title shot, this one was the champion. Whoever won this Rumble would become World Wrestling Federation champion. Flair was running around with the real World's Heavyweight Championship, which was digitally distorted by Jack Tunney, that bugger. But the dude waltzed in from another promotion, being the face of the other promotion. He waltzed into the WWF. He beat 29 other guys and took their title in one of the greatest one-hour wrestling performances. The 60-Minute Man showed up that night.
That's right.
And
look, I gotta say, leading into this, I remember, because I was never into the dirt sheets or anything like that back in the day. I was a kid, man, when this all happened. And I remember a Sunday afternoon. This was before they digitally blurred anything out. It was the first promo that Heenan did with that belt.
Ice cream and horse manure. That's got to be on this.
And he says, "I'm holding here the belt of the real heavyweight champion. This belt belongs to a real world's heavyweight champion, and he's on his way." And I knew the belt. I knew that it was the NWA, WCW, whatever you want to call it. I knew that was Ric Flair's belt. I had no idea that Ric Flair had gone up north, and that was the first I'd heard of it and realized. And in my mind, I'm thinking, what is going to become of WCW, my beloved WCW? I was too young and stupid to realize that I wasn't supposed to like what was going on at the time. You know what I mean? Like I was into a lot of what was happening, and I just could not get over Ric Flair is going to be up there. Then my mind began to race with the possibilities. You know, we'd seen PWI magazines with, you know, would this dream match ever happen? Flair and Hogan on the cover, and then, you know, or you know, any of the after mags that would do these dream matchups sometimes, and you'd have Flair and Hogan, who would win? And it's like, are we going to finally get to see that? And oh, he's with Heenan. This is terrible. Hogan's in trouble. Everyone's in trouble, you know. And it's just like my mind was blown. And I know that for whatever reason, Flair's run is considered to not go great and to not be one of the best in the world when he went up there back then. But for my money, what happened at this Royal Rumble and then the ensuing promo, and there's a couple of little nuances I'll point out that just always stand out to me when we get there. But I love this promo.
Absolutely. It's one of the, put that cigarette out.
Yes.
Rob, what does this promo mean to you? Nothing yet.
Oh, I saw the Nature Boy documentary on 30 for 30 from ESPN. I don't remember if it was in that or not.
So just to give you a taste of what's about to happen here, the reason this one's special is not just because he went up to the competition and won their belt. I think the reason this one is especially special is because he ruled the previous promotion, Crockett, NWA. He ruled it. He was their Hogan. He was their king.
Yeah.
And he left and he went up and he wasn't there one calendar year and he went, this is the greatest moment of my life. So just basically, he threw his whole legacy in the trash.
Not when he beat Harley Race, not, not any of his
American
bouts
Dream.
with Dusty Rhodes. Yeah.
Not Luger.
Right.
Not Bobby Eaton. Beautiful. Bob, what are your memories of Tear in My Eye?
I want to add, I'm going to probably say this all the time. I'll just do this very quickly. We should always be giving credit to Gene Okerlund in all of these.
Absolutely.
This is so important. The ultimate straight man with just enough little wink, wink, but just enough, like kind of like 60s Batman with Adam West. Here's the wink, wink for the adults. This is the playing it straight for the kids, so they're not going to notice that there's a goof around for adults at the same time. Double meaning. Mean Gene Okerlund, hands down the greatest of all. So I'll put my hands down. The greatest of all time. So I'm just going to, I was being silly. But no, I want to say that all the time, every time, once per episode. This Rumble, like you mentioned, Double M, is it was the first Rumble that meant anything. Because I think, you were talking about the best Rumbles, I think one of the, in my mind, the best two Royal Rumble matches are 90 and 92. 91 was garbage. It was so hideously boring. And for a lot of reasons, that's a whole different discussion for another time. But 92 was the first time. I think that's when we realized we had to fight for something. And then, of course, from 93 forward, it sets up WrestleMania, blah, blah, blah. But everyone watching wrestling knows exactly what I'm talking about. So that's why every elimination meant so much. That's why, and I'm sure you guys will mention Bobby Heenan and Gorilla's commentary as time goes on. We're just talking about those promos, but
you just gave me an idea that commentary can count as a great promo. That's basically a 1 hour long promo. Bobby and Gorilla during that Rumble.
Yeah. So there's so much awesomeness going on. And keep in mind, you have Mr. Perfect and Bobby Heenan, two amazing talkers in the background.
Yep.
Yeah.
With Gene Okerlund. Oh, and by the way, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. And Rob, I do want to mention, as far as Ric Flair documentaries to set you up for this promo, the 30 for 31 is fine, and maybe don't watch any other recent Ric Flair documentaries to hinder your view of the Nature Boy. I will say no more.
And I've heard the background on some of the other ones.
And if you go see the Iron Claw, Rob, when Ric Flair shows up in the movie, you might want to, well, not popcorn. It's not a popcorn movie, but if you got to go to the bathroom, that might be the time to go.
That's the time to go.
But get up and leave to go.
Of course.
That's an important step. Yeah, that's an important step in the process.
Why they call me the brain.
So Royal Rumble 1992, Knickerbocker Arena, I believe.
Yes.
And like the Piper promo, I'm going to give you the pre-match little spiel and then the post-match promo, which is the real gold. But I wanted to include the pre-match just to kind of give you a before and after. Flair is very composed and serious, and plus I had to include it because Lord Alfred Hayes is in, and I have never seen Lord Alfred Hayes fail to deliver during a wrestling promo. And here we go.
I've managed to get myself into the dressing room of Ric Flair for this Coliseum video exclusive. Tell me, Mr. Flair, how did you fare in the Royal Rumble draw?
Lord Alfred, I drew number 3. To a lot of people out there, they'd say, my God, what a disadvantage you go in at. But look at it like this. When your name is Ric Flair, when you're the claimant to the real World Heavyweight Championship, you know that to make everybody a believer, that I've got to beat 29 other men. So I'll get number 3. That means I'll be in there close to an hour. It makes no difference. When I walk out, I will be the World Wrestling Federation champion against all odds, and that's the bottom line.
That is the bottom line from Ric Flair. So now, back to the ringside.
All right, by virtue of winning the Royal Rumble, we have a brand new World Wrestling Federation champion as the press watches on. At this time, to present the title belt to the new champion, our president, the distinguished Jack Tunney.
Congratulations, Ric Flair, on becoming the undisputed champion of the World Wrestling Federation.
Let me just say, after Vito distorting the belt to proclaim me the real world champion, I'm going to tell you all, with a tear in my eye, this is the greatest moment in my life. When you walk around this world and you tell everybody you're number 1, the only way you get to stay number 1 is to be number 1. And this is the only title in the wrestling world that makes you number one. When you are the king of the WWF, you rule the world. Think about it like that, Mr. Perfect.
Guys,
the brain. Woo! Woo! Let's give a big one. Woo! You did it. I was never so impressed with anything I've ever seen in all my life. He went out there for over 60 minutes, never took a back step, took it to Hogan, took it to The Undertaker, took it to whoever got in that ring. That's why he is, Bobby, we call him now, a real world heavyweight champion.
We're not the kind of guys to say, we told you so, but we told you so.
Okay, very good. Ric Flair, you have made put that cigarette out. You have made World Wrestling Federation history here tonight.
It's the greatest moment of my life. I want to jump, I want to party, but I gotta tell you like this, for the Hulk Hogans, and the Macho Mans, and the Pipers, and the Sids, now it's Ric Flair, and y'all pay homage to the man. Woo! I love it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps it up. We hope you have enjoyed your Royal Rumble. For my broadcast colleagues, Gorilla Monsoon, Bobby the Brain Heenan, Sean Mooney, Mean Gene Okerlund, saying so long from the Knickerbocker Arena in Albany, New York.
Love it.
I
love it.
That was the last thing you saw when it went off air. Was that?
Yeah.
That never happened.
Yeah.
Well, and you guys as WWF fans from way back, when you see that and you close a show that way, you know, the whole mantra of Vince McMahon to this point was send them home happy
and don't smoke.
But right, but now
was that Pritchard.
Now
Pritchard
one of the greatest villains of all time, you know, one of the worst villains of all time is walking out with that belt. You know, how must the kids have felt at that moment in time?
Yeah.
You know,
it was I had started watching a little bit. We had started getting NWA, WCW up in these parts. We started getting worldwide while Flair was still there. So I had gotten to actually watch a little bit of Ric Flair. Later on, I'd get tapes and then the network, YouTube, and be able to watch all of the glorious 80s Ric Flair matches. But when he first showed up in WWF, I was familiar with him. I had just missed the battles with Funk, but I saw all the stuff with Luger, which I loved, and Sting. So being pretty new to NWA, I saw it as it was the Bizarro wrestling organization. WWF was where all the heroes always win. Sometimes there's a hiccup, but in the end, the heroes win. NWA was the Bizarro. That's where the bad guys win. They cheat. Those dastardly 4 horsemen gang up on good guys, and they just win. And the good guys, they're like the rebels in Star Wars. Bless their hearts, but they just can't compete with all these bad guys, and they run amok, and they run the asylum. This guy comes from the NWA to WWF, and he turns the WWF into the NWA. So what had usually happened when an NWA guy would come is they would change his gimmick or they would job him out, and it felt like a personal thing, right? Like I'm gonna break down all these NWA guys and show that NWA pales in comparison to WWF. And I was so confused, like not just watching wrestling as, you know, taking it as legit, but also being aware that it's a work and kind of like what everyone does today, you know, talking about the booking. At the time, I was confused. Why would they book this? Why would they book this guy? I liked Flair, but I remember thinking, like, why did they book him to come in and take their belt? This is not what the status quo was with NWA guys coming in. Like, they didn't change his gimmick, which was crazy. He got to wear his robes and be Ric Flair. They didn't call him Nature Boy, but it's still on his robe. But he just waltzed in and took their belt. And I thought, how did this happen? How did he get away with this?
That's a good question. I would suggest this. Always look at the other heels. And also keep in mind, we're building up for WrestleMania. I mean, he's winning it at the Rumble to lose it at Mania to, I guess, at one point Hogan and then Macho Man, of course, inevitably.
Oh, right.
But who were the other top heels at the time?
Sid?
Sid had become a heel about 30 seconds before this.
That's true. That's true.
I was going to say Sid was
But I want to include who do we? Well, we got
Snake.
really two of them in my mind. Well, that was one of the two. The first one I would be like, okay, Undertaker was one, but he was very new, and also he was getting these nice babyface reactions, and they turned him like a week or two after this or whatever it was. So no, not the Undertaker. The other one, of course, would be Jake Roberts, but Jake Roberts, with the thing with championships, we've heard Jim Ross say this to death. You need the reliability factor.
Oh yeah.
And Jake Roberts is not reliable. So it was good for Jake to be like, let's just let Macho Man beat him up around the horn for as long as you can. We get one of them on TV, and then who knows what's going to happen with Jake. And Jake, lost to Undertaker shortly after, wasn't there much longer. So really, who's your choice? Your choice is Ric Flair.
It's true. That's true. And it's just shocking that there wasn't any other heel. For the original plan was for Hogan and Flair.
Mm-hmm.
This guy spent less than half a year. Was it a half a year? He came in right after SummerSlam.
They announced it in August, I think. But I think late September was his first appearance on Superstars.
Yeah.
But really,
that never happened.
You got to keep in mind too. It's still not much time, because they didn't have 10 hours of programming every week back then. They had a couple hours or whatever it was.
That's right.
So really, you didn't see that much of Ric Flair before this.
He was on one pay-per-view, Survivor Series. That's it.
Right. And of course, now Northeasterners, we had Madison Square Garden Network, so we'd see the house shows where he beat Hogan by DQ once, or Hogan being he pinned, whatever. But none of that counts. So yeah, we just saw the Nature Boy would occasionally show up on a Sunday and beat up a jobber, and Jim Neidhart would be on commentary with Gorilla. I just want to date it as much as I possibly can. and there you go. So much awesome stuff. And also, I want to throw this in. Sorry, guys. A lot of Savage always did this too, and Flair and his boys did it here. They didn't do the clean, pristine, okay, promo, catchphrase, we're done talking, we stare at the camera, some talking head with a microphone looks. The three boys, they are hamming it up and yelling. They're still going off camera.
Yep.
They're still talking. I love it. I love it. I love that part. I love pay homage to the man. I love again, I'm one of the people who's watched this ad nauseum. And Michael, I have your timeline. My area got NWA or really WCW at the same time. So I was more of a just missed the Terry Funk and then Luger Sting onward. So I had pretty much the same knowledge of Flair as you did. But they're still going off camera. So it just looks like a big party, and we could care less what anyone says or thinks. I forgot Jack Tunney was in this.
Yeah, me too.
Furthermore,
well, and what's interesting is knowing what had led up to this, because Flair even mentions it. You pixelated the other belt and that sort of thing, and you can't deny this. It really is that Flair swagger, but also like Flair was always great in all of his promos. This is the thing, like in a good promo, you don't just put yourself over. You've got to make sure that you're putting over your competition as well as even the company. And so by Flair saying this is the greatest day of my life and this title means that I'm on top, he is promoting now. He's stepped into that role as champion to promote the WWF, but he's doing it in such a way that people like me are looking and saying, but the big gold belt you had, and what do you mean? But
the battles with Ronnie Garvin.
Yeah, you're incredible. Yeah, your incredible battles with the likes of rugged Ronnie Garvin,
Ricky Steamboat.
Well, now those Steamboat matches are something to behold. But the idea here is like he's putting over the company, but there's also a grain of truth to it as well, because the WWF is the top promotion, always has been, and so for him to say, I've done it here now, it adds this air of legitimacy to him and the excitement that's there. What I love is I think, and again, it goes back to what we've talked about before with the blurring of the lines between who's working and who's not. Heenan and Perfect are having such a good time, and I really think it's because they understand who's there. I think a lot of the guys in the locker room understood what Ric Flair brought to the table from a talent perspective. I don't know that the fans got it that much. In fact, even Flair has said he and Hogan didn't really sell out the way they thought they would. And and Flair said, because people didn't know me in all these other territories.
Yeah.
As much reach as Turner had and as much reach, he said, I still wasn't as known. We didn't have the reach of the WWF. And for me, my little regional brain, that's hard to kind of comprehend and even believe. But I think that I do wonder if maybe there wasn't enough effort put into letting Ric Flair really be the dirtiest player in the game to put Hogan back on his heels, so that, Hogan Flair would have really mattered. And because one thing Flair has never had a problem with, no matter what people may say, is putting someone over when the time is right to put them over.
I don't think the issue is, did Flair have a problem with it? I think in that situation, Flair will lie down and he's the champion. He's not in charge. But I honestly think Heenan and Perfect were just good buddies and kind of, hamming it up and having fun with each other.
Well, yeah, but their response, like the laugh when he says, "With a tear in my eye," there's a chuckle that they give as though, like, this is it. Here he comes. Here he goes.
Yeah.
It's going to
be all. They're laughing at him. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't disagree with you. I think they're kind of goofing on the Nature Boy. I think a lot of wrestlers and talent at that time. Obviously, I wasn't there. I think they also saw a lot of that NWA stuff is very nice, but very regional, depending on who it was. And I'm sure they respected him. But really, Mr. Perfect may not have been the champ in WWF or whatever, but on this big stage, Mr. Perfect was a bigger wrestling star than Ric Flair on this stage.
He was.
So was Bobby Heenan and Gene Okerlund, honestly.
Yeah.
And they never let Flair do anything other than be fancy. Like, he just came in and he was fancy and he could speak well, but they never let him do anything dastardly. Like, the most dastardly thing he did before this was sliding the chair under Hogan's head. He didn't even really do anything to Hogan. Like, Taker was the one that drilled him into the chair. Flair was just interfering. So he was more of a rascal than, a scumbag who must be dealt with, baby, like the American Dream had done so many times. And the Dastardly Horseman, like Flair without the Horseman. I think this run, one of the reasons why some people think it's disappointing is because he didn't have the Horseman backing him up. And what a shame. Like, they were ships that passed in the night. Tully and Arn and Barry were here. We almost had it. And J.J. Dillon was there too.
But can I just play the devil logistics man here? But take a look at if you're not an NWA fan, take a look at the visual of Arn, Tully, and Barry was a big, tough dude. But if you look at Flair, Arn, and Tully, and just stand them next to Axe Smash, Hogan, Warrior,
Hakeem, Bossman,
but
it gets to be like
rockers.
And that's the idea, the WWF being the land of the giants. Yeah. But I will say this: if you book anything well, it can get over. And I think that and you said it, Michael, that he was more of a rascal than he was like evil, than he was dastardly, than he was the dirtiest player in the game. I think that if you booked him to not the culture at this time was still very much geared toward, let's get this kid audience. Let's get and it's not a slight on it, because there's some really good stuff out of this era, but there was still the mindset of, we're catering to the kids here, and it worked for there. And so you wanted it to be a little more cartoony. You wanted to be a little more like, hey, He-Man's got a sword, but he doesn't stab anybody. You wanted, it's that kind of thing going on here. And I think that had they darkened it up just a little bit, to where Flair's winning at all cost, and he's doing the evil things that he would do down south, then I think what you've got is the people want that hero to step up and beat him, and they kind of went there with the Macho Man stuff.
Yep.
I had Miss Elizabeth first and all that other silliness with the pictures and everything. That skirted some lines of propriety. And you were messing around with a relationship that everybody loved, but like, I don't know, in a world where they let a cobra bite Randy Savage, it's like, let Flair go out there and hang Hogan up on the ropes and, break a leg or something, let him do the Dusty attack kind of thing in the parking lot. Let him
beat him up in the parking lot. Yeah. Like, just quickly thinking about it, like you said, Bob, like the Horsemen wouldn't be able to match up with the Twin Towers and the other giants, but when I think about it more, the Horsemen dismantled the Road Warriors, and those guys were monsters. Like those guys were WWF guys who were just in the NWA. Like they were.
I'm saying, but would Vince allow it though? Of course, with
that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
But it could be totally like NWA showed that it can be done. Like this gang of 4 masterminds, they weren't just tough; they were masterminds, all 4 of them.
Well, that's the thing. They were smarter than you. They were more talented than you. You may be big, you may be strong, but you're not a horseman, and so.
And they're a different breed of heel too. What set Flair apart here, and I said before, why this guy? Why, for a WWF fan who doesn't know who this is, why does he get to waltz in and take the belt when it took Macho years to get the belt? And Hogan had a stranglehold on the belt for a long, long time. Why this guy? Well, this isn't your typical heel. He's emotional with a tear in my eye. No heel talk like that.
Mm-hmm.
And if he did, it was to mock being emotional, like all the wrestlers who are some wrestlers. Big Show had a crying gimmick, and Angle is a big one, right? Always crying at the drop of a hat. But this guy, he didn't have tears streaming down his cheeks. He wasn't doing the exaggerated wah, wah, wah voice. This is a man. Like, if you're watching this guy and you're relatively new to him, this guy's a man, like he's a tough man. He's sneaky. He's sinister, dirtiest player in the game. And this is a man just admitting to you, like, I've got a tear in my eye because this is a special moment to me. Like it's a human being delivering a promo, not a cookie cutter comic book villain. Like most WWF heels were at the time, monster heels. So speaking of comic book villain, Rack Time Rob, what'd you think of Ric Flair's tear in my eye promo?
I think with what you guys have been listening to you guys talk about what had been leading up to this moment, how wrestling stories had been told very much. And I remember the 80s wrestling being huge. I mean, I had a lot of friends who were big into wrestling and things like that. They were attracting the kids.
Yeah.
It was basically seen as a kid's medium. And at the same time, during the 80s, I was very much into something that was considered a kid's medium, but was kind of growing out of that and challenging that stereotype, which was comic books.
Yeah.
And the characters were getting more complex. You didn't just have the mustache twirling villain anymore. You
had the justified villain.
Yeah, you had, you got more in depth into like the motivations of a Dr. Doom, a Lex Luthor. And then you also saw the rise of the anti-hero, where Wolverine became very popular, the Punisher, things like that. Batman, even things like Batman took a darker edge when, even to this point, everyone was still remembering the Adam West TV show, which was very reflective of the comics of the times, but things moved beyond that after the TV show went off the air. So I think this is kind of, in a couple years, WWE programming, I know, is going to be very different and catering to a very different audience. Where sure, they're still selling toys to the kids and things like that, but you've got a whole new audience now of people who had been following wrestling in the 80s and are still following in the 90s, and they're kind of pulling things along to a more complex, maybe mature storyline. And this might be the start of it. And I wonder how much this particular storyline resolves itself at the next WrestleMania.
Well, Macho came out of nowhere and beat him for the belt. They threw together a pretty quick program with Flair and Macho Man.
Okay. But I was thinking, did they have that? I mean, did they build that, or did they just kind of like throw it into, hey, at WrestleMania, something's going to happen?
Yeah, they had 2 months to have them start a beef, basically.
I mean, it's a way to churn, get a bigger churn, because you're like, it's like ending on a cliffhanger.
Right.
What
the longest 3 years of my life were between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So.
Yeah.
Wasn't that the Mania? It was Flair and Macho, and then the other main event, it was Sid and Hogan.
Sid and Hogan. So originally they announced Hogan versus Flair for that belt right there.
Right.
So that's what it seemed like it was going to be, since Flair threw Hogan out, Sid pulled him out. But then they pulled the plug on that, and they said, we're doing the old switcheroo, and Sid and Hogan have an issue because Sid threw Hogan out of the Rumble, cost him the belt. These big 2 blonde behemoths are going to go at it. That made sense. Battle of the Titans.
Yeah.
And then it was literally like, what's Flair going to do? Once again, who's reliable? Guess what? Greatest of all time is pretty reliable.
Hogan was leaving, by the way. That's
that's another
so.
problem
What's
too.
the finish? So is Hogan going to beat him, and which would be the natural finish
Right.
against WWF? Whatever. Hogan, that's just fine. Hogan beats Flair. That's great. But then there's two problems. Hogan's leaving, so you can't put the belt on Hogan. But the finish, a heel, especially Flair beating Hogan at the end of a WrestleMania, that's not going to work for him, brother. It's not going to work for Vince McMahon either.
Yeah,
so,
Flair, Slick Rick, he'll get away with it for the Rumble. He'll invert the universes and turn the WWF into NWA for the Rumble. And, everyone goes home sad. But he won't get away with it at that time at WrestleMania. There was no way a heel was walking out with a belt at WrestleMania.
Let me ask a stupid question. Where was Hogan going? Because this was after No Holds Barred. Did he have another movie he was going to do?
I thought this was Thunder in Paradise time, but also this was one of the times. What's up?
Suburban Commando. Thunder in Paradise was
this is a few years before Thunder in
had
Paradise.
already happened.
Around the Yokozuna stuff.
Yeah.
And WCW arrival. So this would have been Suburban Commando?
Well, this was his first big hiatus. When he did Suburban Commando, which was filmed in 90 so Warrior could be champ.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Or No Holds Barred, which was filmed in 88, released in 89, so Savage could be champ.
Right.
Notice a pattern, folks.
Yeah.
But
Mr.
this time,
Nanny? I don't know.
But what he did, but in 92, I'm assuming it was Thunder in Paradise. But maybe
in the long run, every movie he did, he should have held onto that belt instead.
I know, right? Well, he didn't have to land. He didn't have to land on his tailbone making movies, I guess.
That's true.
I got stunt doubles for that.
Can you imagine like a 5'4", 170-pound guy with a wig and a handlebar mustache dropping the leg on Zeus?
Yeah. Who is your Hulk Hogan stunt double? Good luck.
Yeah. Nothing shatters the illusion of a 6-year-old Batman fan more than catching a quick glimpse of Robin's balding stunt double. So.
Hogan, in retrospect, really should have stuck with the Axe Bomber as his finisher everywhere, not just Japan.
Yeah, I know, right? But be that as it may. But Hogan was leaving, so there's really no finish for your main event. So that gets your switching. But either way, this was, I want to also mention the TV visual, and Perfect's also in the background. But
hey, look, Bobby's doing the...
But if you're just like one of those Dick Ebersol type of producers, who's producing Saturday Night's Main Event in the 80s or whatever, if you're just one of them and you don't know or care the history of any of these guys, you see Ric Flair with a manager who's 6 inches taller than him.
Yeah.
And that doesn't look good. We don't see it because we see Ric Flair and we see Mr. Perfect, and that's what we see. But if you're one of them TV folks, you see that and you go, why isn't that guy who's behind him and 6 inches taller the champion?
Right.
Is just in your brain, their brains, we know all the reasons, but I'm just saying I don't see Hulk Hogan under any circumstances. I don't remember him on TV letting Ric Flair leave him laying in that time period, if I don't recall.
No. What prayer do you think the brain is saying here?
He's just thanking heaven for the victory.
Gratitude.
He
knew it all along.
Thanking the heavens that him and Okerlund can finally hit the bar after all this.
And afterwards, Flair would do a lot of crazy promos. But I don't know, and Steve, you would know better than any of us here. Were there many like crazy eye Ric Flair promos before this?
Well, yeah, he'd get a little angry. Like that whenever he got pumped, his eyes would do that, and a lot of times it was, he'd take the sunglasses off. He'd be wearing sunglasses and he'd take them off and just get real serious. And his eyes would get big, especially if he had been slighted or humiliated in some way.
Damn that rugged Ronnie Garvin.
Yeah. Well, Flair's a tale of multiple facets in one individual, because you saw prior to the Royal Rumble match, he talked about drawing number 3, and he did a classic. I'm starting kind of low and I'm building up a little bit, but he didn't go nuts.
How composed he is here.
Yeah. And there were times in his career where Flair was the good guy, and he would sit in the locker room and he'd be very composed and very calm in his delivery of his promo and how appreciative he was of everything. And it was never as engaging as when he was either bragging on himself about all the money he had, the cars he drove, the women he was with, or when he'd just get mad. And that's when the eyes would come out, you know.
It's a great point.
Sting, you know, like he would do that kind of thing. And so, yeah, those big eyes were a staple of his when he'd get really mad or really fired up about something.
It's a great point. This is totally a face Flair promo at the beginning here.
In a lot of ways it is.
This is him going against Funk.
Yep. And when you get to his end of match promo, like you keep expecting him, like there was a moment where, you know, he says everyone will pay homage to the man. You know, you're skirting very close to the line of to be the man, you got to beat the man, and now I'm the man, brother. And he didn't do that, you know, and I don't know if that's, again, that could be a very much a Vince McMahon edict. Hey, we don't want you doing all those things you used to say down there. We don't want you talking about jet flying and limousine riding. We've got the $1 Million Man for all that. You know, you're the champion. That's what we want you to be. And so it feels like maybe some of his legs were cut off from under him. You know, some of his tools were taken out of his toolbox, so to speak. I don't know that, but that's speculation on my part. You know, all these years later,
it's got to be. It's got to be. It happened to everybody at the time. You know, like, no, you don't get to bring the full arsenal.
Yeah.
But he got to keep quite a bit of the arsenal, though.
Yep.
Fantastic promo.
Chancellor Gowron eyes.
Fantastic promo, and that was a great pick, Steve.
Thanks.
Let's throw out some plugs here before we sign off. Rack Time Rob, where can people find you?
Oh yeah, hi. I am part of What's on Joe Mind. We do a live stream about the world of G.I. Joe every Tuesday night at 9:05.
9:05.
9:05.
Is that Turner? That's not Turner time, is it?
That is Turner time. We are typily after an encore presentation of the Beastmaster.
Was that Iron Mike's idea? 5 minutes after the hour?
9:05. Yeah. Used to be we would do Thursdays at 9, and that was an old SCTV callback. But
yeah, Stunning Steve, please tell me that Geek Out Loud is 5 minutes past the hour start time.
Well, Geek Out Loud goes 5 hours sometimes, depending on what kind of rambling on mood I get into. Geekoutpodcast.com. It's the show. It's become really a show about anything. You know, Seinfeld was a show about nothing. Geek Out Loud's kind of become the show about anything. But we have a good time over there. So check it out, geekoutpodcast.com.
And Mr. Bob, what's going on with you down in San Diego? Mention the Bob Squad too.
Yes. Yeah, Bob Squad, everybody's in the Bob Squad if you want to be. There's no membership fees, there's no nothing, daddy. You just live on the edge of a lightning bolt, baby. Follow me on Instagram at Bob Hanson Jokes, because San Diego, Claremont Mesa Boulevard, Mic Drop Comedy Club. I'm headlining the Gold Room Thursday, April 11th. Definitely be there. There's tickets. I do stand-up comedy. I should have mentioned that. I say jokes into a microphone. You get the jokety gigglies, the chuckles, the guffaws. You can have a good time, kick back, drink the giggle juice, sip the silly sauce, chug the ha-ha drink, do stuff, rubbing elbows, greasing palms, schmoozing, networking, movers, shakers, trendsetters, go-getters, gypsies, champs, and thieves, every single last one of you. Come on out, Mic Drop Comedy Club, Thursday, April 11th. It's in my Instagram, the link, blah, 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 blah. Thank you.
You got to work with a tear in my eye into your next set. Take a sip of your drink. Do they provide you with a beverage at these shows?
Actually, no, they do. They do have a nice green room with some snacks and some beverages. I don't know. I'm not important enough to have a writer, as they say, where you can request certain things. But I think I will have to request a Pepsi Zero or a Wild Cherry Pepsi Zero, which is wild.
You take a sip of that beverage and you say, "With a tear in my eye," and see if you pop the crowd. This is the greatest beverage I've ever had. And you can find me, of course, on Armchair Directors with Crandall, talking about movies. Take us out, Bob. Tell him, Hawk!
All right. Thanks for watching the greatest promos here on YouTube. It's a popular social media streaming platform with regular recorded videos as well. No time to explain how it works. Michael Mercy, check him out. He's got toys. He's got wrestling chat. We say stuff. We do things. We chew the fat. We whistle dicks. We wax philosophical, rubbing elbows, greasing palms, chomping at the bit. Like hermit crabs crawling out of a bucket, you just can't stop us. Greatest wrestling promos.